All right, shalom, shalom. This is your brother Issachar coming back at you with another lesson. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashai, Bahasham, Wakak Kadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect and the 144,000 scattered across the four corners of the earth. Shalom to you. In today's lesson, we're going to go into how our Lord and Savior Yahawashi, who the world stubbornly calls Jesus Christ, is coming back in the middle of World War III. All right, and how these Edomites and heathens, when they're going to be fighting each other in this Third World War out there in the Middle East, how they're going to be petrified, when they see Yahawashi returning with those gigantic spaceship, because Yahawashi is coming in the father ship. All right, and he's gonna show up over there in the Middle East, right in the middle of World War III, right in the thick of it. All right, so without further ado, let's get it. Second Esdras, chapter 13, verse 1 on down. And it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night, because right here Esdras had a vision. All right. And lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. So that wind is talking about a destruction. Okay, because the Lord is coming from, from outer space. He's coming from a whole nother realm. Okay, the Lord is coming in what you call a portal. If you're not familiar with that, something called a wormhole. All right, because the Lord is coming from a whole nother realm. Because the Lord is where He's at right now. He's in the fourth dimension. All right, and He's gonna enter right here where the planet Earth is. This is the third dimension. All right, where you mortals live. You see, this is the physical realm. All right, this is the third dimension. It's a whole nother realm. All right. So there arose a wind from the sea. Yeah, because like when if you ever seen that movie like Star Wars, all right, Avengers, when they're in those spaceships out there, because it's like a sea out there, because the spaceships, when they're out there, just cruising, it's like riding in the sea almost, that's why it's called a space ship. See, because it's just out there, cruising, you see. All right, so Yahawashi is coming in that spaceship, a so-called UFO, a so-called UAP. Verse 3, and I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven, and when he turned his countenance to look, all things trembled that were seen under him. All right, because let's stop right there. Second Esdras chapter 13, verse 3. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with thousands of heaven. So what's that man that waxed strong with thousands of heaven? So it's talking about Yahawashi. He's coming with millions and millions of angels. Okay, we're talking a lot of angels, a lot. All right. All things trembled that were seen under him. So why are things going to be trembling that are under Yahawashi? Because Yahawashi, his spaceship is bigger than the planet Earth. All right, that's literal. All right, wrap your head around that. That's the reality. It's not exaggeration. And no, Yahawashi's ship is bigger than the planet Earth. Literal. Okay, and that's just one. All right, he's coming with millions of spaceships. Because he's gonna make an example of our enemies. All right, our enemies are about to catch like the a heavenly beatdown. You know, facts, because they're gonna learn to fear the Lord. They don't fear right now. You know, but when the Lord gets here, it's gonna be known. You see, it's gonna be known out here. Second Esdras chapter 13 verse 4. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burnt that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it filleth the fire. Okay, because Yahawashai has a very deep, strong voice. All right, he's the son of Yahweh. He's very powerful, very powerful. So all they burnt that heard his voice, like as the earth that faileth when it filleth the fire. So that people are gonna get burnt up, because the Lord, when he gets here, the righteous he's going to beam up, save them in those spaceships. But the wicked, everybody else, he's gonna shoot laser beams on them. They're gonna be vaporized, turn to powder. Verse 5. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of a number from the four winds. So there was a multitude of men. All right, talking about these militaries. So there's gonna be women out there too, because here real soon, America's gonna have a draft for the men and women to go out there and fight. You see, because this World War III is building up right now. It's just gonna get bigger and bigger and bigger. So there was gathered together a multitude of men out of a number from the four winds of the heaven. So from the four corners of the earth. That's why it's gonna be a third World War, because you're gonna have militaries and nations from the four corners of the earth. From United States, Russia, China, NATO, the Arabs, Africa. You're gonna have all these nations, the Europeans, you're gonna have all these nations fighting each other right there in the Middle East. See, so from the four winds, from the four corners of the earth. See that? So there's a lot, there's a lot of what China has, like more than 1 million man army, and now, these powerful nations, now they have androids and robots and all that. So can you imagine there's going to be millions of soldiers fighting each other out there in the Middle East? Once World War III, like in full bloom. Right now it's the buildup, we're in the first steps, but it's pretty much already here, but these things take time, but it's pretty much already here, it's pretty much already going. It's just taking time to, be in full bloom. See? To subdue the man that came out of the sea. Yeah, because these nations are going to try to fight the Lord. All right, once they're fighting each other out there in the, they call it the Battle Armageddon. That's Armageddon, so that's the mountain of troops. That's what that means in Hebrew, Armageddon, mountain of troops, because it's gonna look like a mountain, because you're gonna have all these nations from around the world fighting each other in one location, So it's gonna be a lot of militaries, a lot of soldiers right there fighting each other. You see? All right, and it's also called the Valley Decision and the Valley Jehoshaphat. The Valley Jehoshaphat is Yahweh's judgment. Okay, that's Yahweh's judgment. You see? All right. So right there you have uh, uh, it's Jehoshaphat means Yahweh's judgment, because right there in the Middle East, in this World War III, is where you know is where the is where you know the these is where these nations are gonna be fighting each other out there. You know. Verse 6, but I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and flew upon it. Alright, so this is talking about Yahawashai, flying in that spaceship. But it's so big, that spaceship, that Esdras described it as a mountain, because that's how big it was. Alright, it's that big. But I would have seen the region or place wherein the hill was driven, and I could not. So what does this mean right here in verse 7? It means that Esdras, he couldn't see where the where the spaceship, where it began and where it ended. You see? All right, he couldn't see where the spaceship began or where it ended. He couldn't see the edges. Like when you go to downtown area, you see those big old skyscrapers, but you can see the top. It may be very tall, but you can see the edges. You can see the top, you can see the sides. The spaceship was so big that basically when Esdras was looking up, it's like when you look up in the sky. Like when it's a clear blue sky, all you see is the blue sky, right? You might see some clouds. Okay, well, Esdras, when he looked up, all he saw was spaceship. He didn't even see none of the edges, because remember, Yahawashi's ship is bigger than the planet Earth. It's that big. Remember, these heathens are about to catch a bad one. A bad one? Yo, a bad one, mi amigo. Very bad. So when Esdras looked up, as far as he could see to the west, as far as he could see to the east, as far as he could see to the south, and as far as he could see to the north, all he saw was spaceship. That's it. He couldn't even see the edges. This is how big the spaceship was. And that's what you gotta fight, Esau. And Yahawashi is coming for you. Remember that, because the Lord hears all you retarded heathen talking trash. But remember, he's coming real soon. You guys are gonna have to face him. Oh yeah, and we're just gonna watch, and laugh, because you heathens are gonna catch a bad one, a real bad one. Your androids, your super soldiers, your clones. It's not no match at all. Don't even start. Verse 8, and after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were so afraid, yet there's fight, because these nations are going to be scared to death. Okay, these nations are going to be terrified. They're going to be terrified when when Yahawashi rolls up. Okay, they're gonna be because imagine all that power. So they're gonna be afraid. They're not gonna want to fight, but the Lord is gonna put it on them to fight. You see? Verse 9, and lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war, but only I saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempest. See, that's all because the Lord's gonna shoot laser beams, all right, out of those spaceships, but also the angels and the 144,000 and YAHAWASHI are gonna be shooting laser beams out of their eyes, like Superman, Brightburn. Imagine. Verse 11, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, so they're all gonna catch it together. But whoever's over there is part of the hopeful elect, the Lord's gonna deliver them. But everybody else, they're not gonna make it, The flaming breath, the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burnt them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. All right, so right here, okay, he said that nothing was to be perceived. So imagine going from millions of people, billions, millions of people, soldiers, from all the noise from the tanks, the guns, helicopters, machine guns going off, to remember millions and millions of soldiers out there fighting the Middle East, to nothing, So you saw that upon a sudden and of an innumerable multitude. So that means you couldn't even count them, because that's how many soldiers are going to be fighting each other out there in the Middle East, in the Saudi Arabia Peninsula, right there. That's where World War III is going to take place, right there in the Middle East. So if you're in the military, focus on the Middle East, because that's where it's going to get heated. That's where World War III is going to take place, right there. Okay, right in that region, right in that perimeter, right there, the Saudi Arabia Peninsula. That's where it's going to go down. That's where it's going to go down, player. Oh, yeah. So that upon a sudden of a innumerable multitude, because innumerable means you can't count them, because that's how many soldiers are going to be fighting each other in this Third World War. Nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and the smell of smoke. Hear that? So it went from, remember, millions and millions of people fighting each other, right? Millions and millions of people fighting each other, to where you can't even count them, to all this noise, to nothing. Because the Lord, YAHAWASHI, and the angels are going to zap them all to nothing. Everything, So their tanks, their jets, everything's going to be eviscerated. Look at the laser beams of this world. Okay, can you imagine the Lord and the angels, what they got? Imagine, Imagine this world, what they got with their laser beams and their direct energy weapons and stuff. Okay, yeah, but imagine what the Lord has and the angels. Imagine their lasers, their weapons. See that? So all these tanks and jets, all these soldiers are just gonna be, eviscerated. See that? See? Nothing was to be perceived. So he saw from millions and millions of soldiers, militaries fighting each other in the Middle East, to nothing. He couldn't see nothing, because the Lord's just gonna eviscerate them, But only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. See that? Because the Lord's gonna burn them all up. Okay, so he didn't even see tanks, or like, oh, I saw a tire over here, I saw a chain over there, I saw an alternator over there. No, all he saw was dust and smell of smoke. So the Lord's about to eviscerate everything. Everything's about to go right there. People, tanks, jets, helicopters, you name it. Even their guns everything's gonna be eviscerated. See? Nothing was to be perceived, because he couldn't see anything, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid. See? Because the Lord is not gonna waste no time. As soon as he gets here, remember, the Lord is giving our enemies 1 hour. Okay? So the Lord's saying, all right, you want to fight me? Fine. The Lord said, I give all you clowns 1 hour. That's it, So right now, the left-hand side, all these nations, the top elites of China, the US, Russia, they're all joining forces to fight the Lord, This is the elites. Okay, because they're having their World War, But the top elites, yeah, they are preparing to fight, Yahushua and the angels. That's top stuff right there. You know what I'm saying? Top stuff right there. But it don't matter. So the Lord is telling all these teams out here, all these teams, everybody on the left hand side, all these elites, all the dukes, they got 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour. That's it. So let's go to let's go down to verse 29. Behold, the days come when the Most High will begin to deliver them that are upon the earth. See that? Because now there's a great awakening, because people know what these elites are up to. You know what I mean? They know that these elites are that they're not in for the people's benefit. So people are waking up to these international bankers. That they're screwing people over, that they're lying to the world and stuff. So right now you have what is called like a great awakening. Israel's waking up, but not only that, you have Edomites, so-called white people. They're even waking up to the fact that their own leaders are lying to them as well. See? Because you have preppers out there, because why do you have people prepping? Because they know, hey, this shit's about to go down, They're coming for our guns, That's what the American patriots say. Hey, they're coming for our guns, they're coming for this and that. And they're right. They may not be 100% when it comes down to the scriptures, but on that part, as far as civil war and all that, they're right on that. It's facts, because it's made evident now. It's being made clear. Because remember, the left-hand side does not care about your opinion. They don't care about what's best for the people. They only have their plan and their agenda. You see, and a lot of people are starting to wake up to that. That's why the people are buying weapons and all that, because they know civil war is about to go down out here. See? Verse 30. 2nd Esdras chapter 13, verse 30. And he shall come to the astonishment of them that dwell on the earth. Yeah, because a lot of people are going to be astonished when they see the Lord beaming up the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans into those spaceships. Okay, because the whole time, people thought that these heathens were the elite, and everyone looked up to the so-called white man like they were gods. They're not. They're the basis of men. All right. Everybody has some type of pigment. All right. The East Indians. All right. Elam. All right. The Iranians. Okay. Ham. The Africans. Okay. Ishmael. Okay. The Arabs. They have some type of pigment. Some type of melanin. The so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, are different shades of brown. So, they all pretty much, have pigment. The only oddball on the earth is the so-called white man. Okay, he is the only oddball on the earth. You see? All right. So, but he convinced the world that everybody else is messed up, and that they're the only ones who look right, when it's the opposite. The so-called white man, you're the only one who's plagued, because that's a curse to look like that, because you have the curse of Cain. All right, you have the curse of Cain. That's why Esau came out red, looking like a so-called white man, because that's the curse of Cain. All right, absolutely. But just because you look like a so-called white man doesn't mean that you're an Edomite. All right, because you have individuals out there that look like so-called white people, but they believe in the Lord. They're Israelites. You're called Confusion of Faces and Israelite foreigner. You see, because the Israelites, we have been scattered amongst all these Gentiles and heathens and slavery. You see. All right. So just remember that. Keep that in mind. You don't have to look. You don't have to look like a so-called black, Latino, Native American to be an Israelite. Remember that the majority of Israelites are gonna look like that, but it doesn't mean that you have to look like that to be an Israelite in order for the Lord to be dealing with you, for you to be part of the Lord's elect. All right, you could look like any nation out there, an Asian, East Indian, Arab. All right, but if you believe in the Lord, then you're an Israelite, because faith is a gift that is given to you from up on high. You see? All right. Huh? So that's why like these leaders right now, they're astonished, because a lot of people are seeing the so-called UFOs out there. People are seeing the so-called UAPs, so they're freaking out. They're freaking out, man. They're freaking out. And people want answers now, but it's because the Lord is starting to show Himself, because the Lord is getting ready to overthrow these Edomites and heathens, and He's about to pick up the Israelites. So what you're witnessing right now is a transition of power, because we're going from the Edomites, starting with the Edomites, because they're the main ones ruling the world, and then the heathens, they got their hand in it too, But the so-called white man, he's the main dude in charge, But there's top elites heathens as well, Moab, Ham, okay, Ishmael, Elam. There's top elites out there too of the heathen, Don't get it twisted. But it's just that the Esau is the main dude in charge right now. All right, just to let you know that. But with that being said, the Lord is going to put them in slavery, and He's going to raise up the Israelites, because remember, the Israelites got next. Second Esdras chapter 13 verse 31. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another, one place against another, and one people against another, and one realm against another. So let's break this down. Second Esdras chapter 13 verse 31. And one shall undertake to fight against another, because a lot of people are gonna turn each other into the authorities, because remember, once that chip is made mandatory, which is the MARK of the NWO, all right, remember that a lot of people are going to betray one another. All right, remember when that first pandemic happened, how a lot of people were cold and people were telling on each other. Remember, like the news told you, hey, you're not supposed to go out in the public, but people still went out, and then other people were recording other people, like going to the beach and all that, going by the rivers and all that, You see, because people were telling on each other, turning each other in. See that? But see, there was still food around. There was still society, a functioning society. But in this second lockdown, it's going to be very severe, because remember, you're not going to have food. All right, at least in the first pandemic, all you had to do was wear a mask. Remember? All right. Keep your distance and all stuff like that. Remember? But this time, there's not going to be no food. All right. So imagine how cutthroat it's going to be. People are going to be very cutthroat. People are already stingy and selfish right now as it is. Everybody, there are a few good people out there, but that's a few. But the majority of people out here are selfish. They're all about them. So it's going to be very cutthroat out here. You want to talk about ultimate betrayals, ultimate backstabbings? Oh yeah, baby. It's about to go down. Especially those of you in those teams out there. Do you have any idea how many spies there are out there? You have any idea how many clones there are out there? A lot of people, you guys think that, oh yeah, that's just my buddy. You have no idea that that's a clone already. But hey, good luck, ladies and gentlemen. But we gotta give you that information, raw and uncut, straight, no chaser. Because there's a lot of snakes out there. There's a lot of spies out there. A whole lot. Especially America, man. America it's crazy, man. There's so many teams out here. You got spies watching spies watching spies. Because if they're all devils, who can they trust? Man. So just get ready for it, Like ultimate betrayals, ultimate backstabbings. You know? Facts. And one shall undertake to fight against another, one city against another. So civil war right there. So we already talked about one shall undertake to fight against another. So family against family, neighbor against neighbor, co-worker against co-worker. One city against another. That's civil war. Okay, civil war, American versus American. You know it's gonna go down out here because of the lack of bread, the lack of food. You know, because people are not gonna have their basic necessities to survive. So you're gonna have to fight. You know, people might say, "Well, I don't want to fight. I'm not a fighter." You're gonna have to fight. It's either you're gonna fight or you're gonna be slaughtered. You know, unless you have a real good hiding spot with food and stuff like that. But you know, that'll only last so long. You know, because remember, the Lord and the angels are coming, so no one's gonna get past them. Yeah, you may last a few months. You know, more than the average. Like, let's say if you're a prepper, you know, and you make it inside your bunker. Okay, you may last a few more months than the average, maybe a few weeks. But remember, the ICBMs are on their way, you know, and so, and right behind them are the Lord and the angels, YAHAWASHI and the angels. You imagine? You know, so, you know, you may escape, just like, remember Amos, this is why in the book of Amos, chapter 5, verse 18 on down, woe unto thee that desire the day of the Lord. Because to what end is it for you? You know, because if you escape one thing, you're gonna get hit with another thing. Remember, because no one's gonna escape the Lord. Remember, He's coming with the angels. You know, when I hear a lot of these preppers out there, you know, talk about, you know, like civil war and all that stuff. Yeah, they're good on some parts, you know, but the thing is that they don't mention the Lord and the angels. You know, they don't give the Lord and the angels no credit. It's like, yo, what's good, you know? You see, because I hear them, you know, like these American patriots, like these doomsday preppers and all that, you know, because yeah, they, you know, they give somewhat, you know, good advice. I mean, as far as like, you know, trying to prep for survival, but you know, it's low level because they're not telling you the full warning, you know. They're just kind of telling you how to prep for like a regular civil war, you know. And then that's it, you know. And then like when it blows over, you know, just, you know, pack food for about 6 months and then you'll be okay, you know. It's like, no, you're not, you know, because remember, the Lord and the angels are coming. You know, I don't give a damn if you have 100 guns, 20 generators, if you have food for 20 years. No one's escaping, no one's leaving this planet. YAHAWASHI and the angels are coming. Remember that they can walk through walls, they can teleport right to your underground city, right next to your bed. You know, like, hey, what's up? You know, what's up, player? You know, what's good? Talking trash? You know? Oh, okay. See? Huh? Yeah, remember that, you know? So a lot of these preppers, you know, they're good, you know, on some parts, but they don't give you the full because they're good, yeah, you know what, you know, explaining about like survival stuff, you know, to kind of flee the city. And that's wise on that part because, yeah, these big cities are going to be complete war zones. You know, over here and like New York, Seattle, you know, Dallas, Chicago, all these big cities are going to be complete war zones. Complete war zones. Los Angeles, man, there's a lot of people. San Diego, you know, there's a lot of people. San Francisco, you know, and these big cities like that, man, you know, they're going to be complete war zones. You know, because not only do you have a lot of mouths to feed, you have, you know, of course you have the military, so you already have the American military because you're in America. Okay, that's obvious. But you have the Russian military here, the Chinese military here. You got Iran military here. You know, you got these Arabs here. Okay, you got mafias out here, gangs. You got all kinds of stuff out here. You got nothing but teams out here. You got the left-hand side. You know, all these Satanists, you know, they're all underground and they're underground cities waiting to come up, you know. You got all kinds of people out here, CIA, FBI, you know, KGB, MI6. You have all kinds of people out here. See, it's not just civilians, you know, that's trying to survive. That's one thing, but you got a lot of soldiers out here, teams, assassins and hunters. See, So that's something else you got to add to it, because it's one thing when you have to fight, another average Joe. Okay, but imagine fighting against like a super soldier, someone who's trained to kill. Imagine, you got nothing but soldiers and sleeper cells out here. A lot. Don't even start. Don't even start. You got a lot out here. A lot. Let's leave it at that. So that's something you have to add to all that. It's not just, okay, well, I'm going to have to just kind of outfight these people right here. No, remember, there's teams out here. Okay, remember that. All right, there's teams out here. All kinds. Militaries out here. UN troops out here. Ready. And they're not over here biting their nails, all scared. They're waiting for the collapse. They're not out here, just like, oh, damn, I hope the societal collapse. No, they're actually, remember like that movie, The Purge? All right, you guys ever seen that movie, The Purge? Remember how certain people were afraid, like they were just hiding, just trying to survive? Okay, yeah, you're going to have those people who are just going to have guns, like to protect their houses and their families. But you have the other teams, remember like The Purge, who are going to go out there hunting, And we're talking a lot. Like that movie, The Purge, that was just a small percent. It's going to be like that, but times 10 on steroids. Because that's not even close to what's going to happen out here. Because remember, you're going to have the 144 out here too. Remember, it's not just Esau and these elites rolling. You're going to have the 144,000 out here too with spiritual power. People with laser eyes. Yup. Facts. The real X-Men who are unstoppable. Remember that. So you got that too. Remember, the angels are out here too. The demons are out here too. Remember that. It's not just the left-hand side and these elites and the UN troops. Nah. They're not the only ones that are going to be partying out here. No, you got the angels out here. You got the 144 out here. See? You got the men of the Lord out here. What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? See? Stop giving the wicked so much credit. They're not the only ones who are out here. Remember that. So remember, here in America, you got a lot of people out here. A lot. So that's one city against another. One place against another. That's World War III. Okay, one place, because like United States versus Russia, one place against another, because that's World War III. A whole country versus a whole nother country. One place against another. World War III. One people against another. Okay, very important right there. Remember that movie, The Purge. Remember how who was the main ones gunning people down? It was the so-called white man, those militias. Because those of you that don't think that like the KKK, like they're still out there and all that, you're tripping. Because that's all that's out there. Who do you think the Dukes are? You think they care about you Israelites? Hell no. White supremacy is very real. The so-called white man, they can't stand looking at the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, they can't stand us, but that feeling's mutual. We can't stand them either. We can give a damn. You see, we can give a damn. But that's a real hatred that goes back all the way to Isaac and Rebekah when they had Jacob and Esau. That's an ancient hatred. Okay, because you got to ask yourself, it's not just a black thing, because back in the 50s and all that, 60s, when they were hanging so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, how come they weren't hanging Arabs and Africans, Hamites, and the Arabs, okay, and the East Indians? The East Indians and the Arabs, they're just as brown as us. How come they weren't hanging them? See? Because they're not Israelites. There's a difference. It's not just about, because, we're so-called black, because we're different shades of brown. It's not a color thing. All right? They may say that, but there's a reason why they hate us so much. It's because we got the birthright. We got the blessing. Remember, it's all about that birthright. It's all about the birthright. It's all about that birthright. All right? I don't give a damn what Esau says. He could come up with 101 excuses, but they want that birthright back. Remember that. And so for them to In their minds, these top elites on the left-hand side, what they want to do to get their birthright back, they have to take out every Israelite out there. Every Israelite out there, including those of you out there who sold your soul. Okay, even like P. Diddy and all them. That's why they're all going. Because these elites don't give a damn. See? You know, you want to play with the serpent, you're going to get bit. Remember that, because even though P. Diddy is excuse my Italian, okay, even though P. Diddy is a little bitch and all that, he sold out to Satan and Baphomet, you know, and over here partying with the so-called white man, he don't give a damn about him, because at the end of the day, he still has Israelite blood. So these elites are even coming for you 2/3. LeBron James, Beyonce, all you witches and warlocks who sold out to Illuminati or whatever they call themselves on the left-hand side, they're coming for you guys too, because you guys still got Israelite blood running through your veins. So they want their birthright back. They don't give a damn. They're coming for every Israelite, including you kiss asses out there. So, you know, some of you Israelites are like, you know, I'm just going to kiss Esau's ass. I'm just going to play it safe, you know. They're going to take your ass out too, you know, and you're going to be ashamed, because you're betraying your own power, your own people, just to be betrayed by the so-called white man. You know, like Al-Azhar. You know, Al-Azhar sold out, you know that dude from Sakari. And you watch what the so-called white man's going to do to him. You know? Facts. Oh, yeah. You know, because remember, it doesn't matter if you go along with their program or not. If you have Israelite blood running through your veins, they're coming for you. That's why the only people who are going to make it are the elect. You know? Because everybody else, the Lord's going to actually allow these elites to have their way with them. Yeah. So that's one people against another. That's a race war. Okay, a race war right there, because the Lord is stirring up the so-called white man to hate the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Remember how it was in the 60s and the 50s? Okay, well, the Lord's going to put that spirit back on them one more time, because remember, who delivered Yahweh's son to be crucified on the cross? It was our own people. So since our own people, and who do they beg to crucify our Lord YAHAWASHI? The so-called white man. So the Lord's like, all right, bet. You can run that, you know? So since our people wanted to use the so-called white man to crucify his son, the Lord's going to use the so-called white man to take out you 2/3. All right? Facts. Same deal. That's why all these UN troops, China, Russia, they're all here, you know? The prophets, yeah, you know, we're speaking about it. But is anyone stopping it? No, because it's the Lord's program. The Lord has them here. Okay, the elites have, you know, these plans, but who's telling the elites? The Lord. Because this is the Lord's program. It's called judgment. So all these UN troops, all these Chinese here, Russians, Arabs, you know, all these sleeper cells that are here, that's judgment from the Lord. Because why you think America is not arresting them and getting them and finding them? Why do you think? Why do you think that, you know, no one can find them? Because it's the Lord's program, you know? And when the Lord says, all right, he's going to put it in the elite's mind to say, all right, go ahead, go for it. And they're going to do it. You see? All right? This is something you got to understand. Okay? So this is something that it's gonna be for sure, for certain, because it's the Lord's program. You know, this is something that you have to understand. So this is why America is hearing about the sleeper cells, but what can they do about it? You know, they can just kind of, you know, tighten up their border a little bit, you know, but that's about it. You know, everybody, a lot of the sleeper cells are already here. You're talking millions. See, but is anyone gonna stop it? No, because it's the Lord's program. See that? Because not only are these UN troops and sleeper cells sent from the elites and the dukes, but who do you think tells the dukes? Okay, Satan. Okay, who do you think tells Satan? Yahweh. All right, so the orders come from up on high. All right, so no one's gonna mess with these sleeper cells. Yeah, you may have a few, you know, here and there, but the main ones, no one's gonna mess with them because the Lord has them here. They're here for judgment, whether you believe it or not, whether you like it or not. So that's why no one's stopping this thing. No one's stopping this thing. It's the Lord's program. That's why either you're gonna get down with the Lord, or you're Esau's gonna lay you down, one or the other. See, but there's no escape, huh? And one realm against another, because one realm. See, so right there, we're at the end of Second Esdras chapter 13, verse 31, and one realm against another, because it is this realm versus a whole nother realm, because the Lord's coming through what? A portal, a wormhole. He's coming from a whole nother dimension. See? So he's coming from a whole nother realm. Imagine? You know? Huh? So with that, that's it on today's lesson. Alright, keep the faith, stay patient, and trust in the Lord. At the end of the day, lean on the Lord. Ask the Lord for help and strength. So with that, stay strong, keep the faith. On your feet, soldier. Shalom.